Today I'm going to make a color sample so that we can select the finish for the shelving unit. If you've missed any of this mini-series, I'll put the playlist at the end of this video so that you can go back and watch what's going on. The shelving unit is not finished, but I want to get an idea of what color we may be using. I have 6 different stains. I'm going to use some finishing paste wax, and I'm going to use just polyurethane over the top of the clear wood. I've taken a scrap piece, I've run it through the planer, I've sanded it with 150 and then 220, and we are ready to get this marked out. This is 34 inches long. I need 8 spaces, and that's going to be 4 1/4 inches for each separate sample. Let's get started. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Deerdorf and this is Detroit DIY. So the first thing I want to do is get me marked out here at 4 1/4 inch sections. So we're going to go 4 1/4, we're going to go 8 1/2, we're going to go 11 3/4, 17, 21 1/4, 25 1/2, 29 3/4, and then our remaining piece. So we'll go ahead and just use the speed square. Get these drawn on here. I'm excited to see some of these different colors on this wood. This is a really nice wood in my opinion. It has a nice look to it naturally. So I'm curious to see the 2 natural finishes as well that I want to put on it. Alright, there we go. So just to avoid confusion, I'm going to write right here on the edge of the board in the space what each finish is. So we're going to start out with carbon gray, then we're going to go with weathered oak, then we're going to go dark walnut, then we're going to go gunstock, then we are going to go golden oak. The golden oak might not be a great representation because it's an older can and it's dried up a little bit. We might have some actual finish issues there. Then we're going to go early American. Then we're going to go just semi-gloss polyurethane. And then we are going to go paste finishing wax. Alright, let's get some on here. Our first color is going to be carbon gray, and I'm just going to be rubbing this in with a rag right up to that line, close as I can get to it anyway. It is very readily accepting this color. Which I wasn't quite expecting, but it's grabbing it right in. So I'm just going to give that a minute to sit on there. In fact, I may just rub another coat right into it now before I wipe it down. I'm going to let that soak on there for a minute. Now I'm just going to wipe away any of my excess. That has a pretty unique look to it. let's take a closer look here. But I don't think it's doing the best at showcasing what this wood really is. So let's move on to the next color. We're going to be using weathered oak. Weathered oak is not one of my favorite stains. When I first saw it in the store, I was kind of excited by it. I thought it would be a very unique stain color, but it was, unfortunately for me, I think, a little bit of a letdown. I was expecting it to be more of a, I don't know, a little more gray in it. We'll see how it turns out on this. Not that I thought it would be a dark gray or anything like that, but just a good representation of a weathered piece of wood, I guess. And it didn't really provide that, in my opinion. So I've got the weathered oak all mixed up. Now this will change a little bit too once I cover this stain with the polyurethane. This stain might be, actually, I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing here. Each one of these I'm going to give 2 coats, rub it in good. I am not going to wipe that one off to try and lighten it any. I'm going to let it dry. There's no puddles. It shows off the grain fairly well. I think better than the carbon gray. And I actually kind of like that. So let's move on now to the dark walnut. And of course, I want you guys to leave in the comments what your favorite is. That may help to influence a decision here. Okay, I have the dark walnut all mixed up. This is a color that I've kind of like and is one of my go-tos, but it has that red hue to it that my wife is not particularly fond of. So we'll see how it goes over here. Every wood stains different, acts different when you put the stain on it. This wood is seemingly thirsty, so it is pulling the stain in very well. In my opinion, when you stain something, it should show the grain off, make the wood pop, not hide it. So this particular color here, I'm just going to let that sit there for a few seconds and wipe it up a little bit. So that it's not quite so dark. This is the dark walnut. Now we're going to move on to the gun stock. If I'm not mistaken, the gun stock also has some reddish hues to it, or is probably the reddest of everything that we're going to use here. And also, if you didn't know, when you're using the same types of stains, like if it's a Minwax product or whatever line it is, you can mix different colors to derive your own custom color. The problem with that is later, if it needs to be repaired or there needs to be a color match, it is near impossible to figure out exactly what you did. But it is something that's doable. With the gun stock all mixed up, we are ready to get some on. The gun stock is proving to be, yes, very red. However, I can say from what I can see going on here, the gun stock is not hiding any of the beauty of the wood. And that is our gun stock. And I like the way that it's accented the grains. I'm just not so sure I'm thrilled with the reds. I think that the golden oak or maybe the early American will be more of a color that I'd like. I like the way the weathered oak has accented the grain as well. We are now off to the golden oak, but the golden oak is an older can here. And while it's still semi-usable, I'm not so sure that we're going to get a super accurate representation of its color because there is some hardened stuff on the side of the can, and this may be coming out a little light. Here is what we have from the golden oak. I like that, and it definitely shows off the grain of the wood. Alright, our last color that we're going to be putting on is going to be early American. After that, the last two will be natural wood samples. With the early American all stirred up, we are ready to go. When the shelving unit was at our cottage, it was also stained, but I'm not sure of the color. This is the early American. I like it. I don't know. It's tough between the golden oak, the early American, and the weathered oak right here. I think the weathered oak could be tops on my list. We'll let this dry a little bit, and then we're going to put some semi-gloss polyurethane over the top of all of it. And this sample spot right here is going to be just natural wood with the polyurethane. Been a little bit, definitely not as long as it should be, but this is a sample, so I'm not super worried about the integrity of the finish. We're going to be using Minwax fast drying polyurethane, and this is a clear semi-gloss. And I'm going to coat this bare piece and every color sample with this. And I'll be putting 2 coats. I'm curious to see what the difference between this polyurethane and the finishing paste wax is going to be as far as color is concerned and the depth of it. They both are a semi-gloss or a low luster. The finishing paste leaves a low luster as well. I'm going to let that dry and put a second coat on it. I've allowed the polyurethane to dry overnight. Now I'm ready to just scuff it up lightly with some 220 grit and put another coat on it. Earlier I was saying that I wasn't concerned with the integrity of the finish, and I'm not, but I am concerned with the look of the finish to make sure that the visual is what I want it to be. And to get the cleanest, smoothest finish, you just need to go over this polyurethane with some sandpaper, then come back and put another coat on. It'll wind up being a lot smoother. Alright, we're going to get that wiped off and get our final coat of polyurethane on. Alright. And this will give us a good representation of what the finish is going to look like. On the actual piece, I would probably apply 4 or 5 coats of polyurethane, sanding between each coat, just to get that flat, super fine finish that looks really good. The polyurethane will level out the surface a little bit. Any grain swelling or anything that takes place when you put the stain on, you can kind of sand that out with the polyurethane. And it adds a very nice layer of protection. Alright, we're going to let that dry for a couple hours, and then we're going to get this last section taken care of with some finishing paste wax. With the polyurethane dry on the rest of this, we are ready to get some paste wax on this piece right here for the last sample. We're going to be using paste finishing wax from Minwax. I like this product. It's durable. It's for interior use obviously, but we're going to be interior. So we're just going to get a little bit on here. That's probably excessive. And we're going to rub it in. We want to apply a thin coat. I was curious to see how much more yellow it might make the wood than the polyurethane, or if it would make it yellow at all. So once I coat the entire piece of wood, we're just going to let that dry for about 15 minutes and buff it off. Alright, I'm going to let that dry. We'll get it buffed off. I'm just going to buff it off with a rag when we get there. 10 minutes. It's been about 15 minutes, and while this is not the desired method of buffing this off, I'm just going to use a cotton rag and wipe over it. There is a potential for a better luster. Using a microfiber, but this will work just fine for what we're doing. And I'll have to say, it does leave the wood more natural looking. You don't get that yellowing. But to the touch, you get a super fine, smooth finish. Alright, let's take a closer look. I want you guys to leave in the comments what your favorites are. We have right here, carbon gray. Not one of my favorites. Weathered oak is next here. I really like that. I think that that turned out way better than I expected. We have dark walnut. It also is not one of my favorites. It just doesn't seem to, kind of like the carbon gray, not showcase the grain very well. The gunstock, even though it's very red in color, does an excellent job in my opinion of showcasing the grain, and I really like that. Don't know how I feel about the red, but I really like the way it showcases the grain. The golden oak, I'm a fan of that. It also showcases the grain very well. The early American, I'm a little bit up in the air about, but it does a good job of showcasing the grain itself. Just semi-gloss polyurethane, you can see how the polyurethane tends to yellow the wood just a little bit, and then just the paste finishing wax leaves the wood very natural looking, like nothing has happened to it at all, but it does add a layer of very good protection. On the back side of this, I have left the finish that was on it when it was a shelving unit at our cottage. I believe this was golden oak, I'm not sure, but it was very rustic left. It was left rough sawn, it was rustic looking, so just an idea of what it used to look like versus what it will look like. Alright guys, that's all we got for this time. Remember, if you're doing a wood project of some sort, it is a good idea to put together some samples for your finishes so that you can see what they will look like on the material that you're using. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider doing so. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those two videos or the playlist that's going to pop up next to me. And remember to always respect the power of your power tools. We'll see you soon.